Welcome, everybody, again to the show. Thanks for joining us today. Sandy, how's it going?
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. Excited to record another show and have some fun.
Me too. Very excited. So everyone should go over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca. There you can download every show that we have done in the past 6 years and listen to it again if you want to, as well as download our free gift. Right, Sandy?
Yeah, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. You also jump on our email list when you do that, so you get to hear about all the events we're doing, things like that, get updates on shows as they get released, and everything that's going on in Rob and my real estate world there. So jump on over and get that report and get on our email list. Keep updated.
Very, very good. And go over to iTunes as well and give us a rating or review for the show. We'd really, really appreciate that. It's been a while since anyone's gone on there and told us what they think. So whether it's good or bad, get over there, click the little button, and leave us some feedback, please. We'd appreciate that.
Definitely. And then go check out our Facebook channels because we're rolling videos out now, and we haven't been doing that for long, a couple months. But if you're listening to this on audio, definitely go jump on over to our Facebook page, Breakthrough Real Estate Investing. You can get engaged into the conversations as we're doing them live, like today, and ask some questions, engage with some of our guests. And we've got some great guests like we do today.
Yeah, we have a great guest today, Jared Hope, who's standing by here with Tilt Group. And so I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions that people want to ask. So now you can go on the live comments section and just click there and ask away. We'll get to them.
Absolutely. So we are going to welcome Jared here in a sec. Anything else you want to cover, Rob, before we get into that?
Not really. I think we're good. I mean, I may be over speaking. I'm not exactly sure if we're going to be getting back into the live tours pretty soon. I'm going to maybe try a one-off and see how it goes, as long as we can get permission to start going through some properties together with us. A very, very small group. It's going to be, sort of an elite thing, I guess. We'll look at it that way. But hopefully we'll be gradually working back into the way that things used to be and get some of these tours going again.
Cool. You've been doing them virtual, right?
I've done a couple virtual, but for the most part, it's just been some one-on-one stuff. We've went back to the one-on-ones, and that's going well too. So, awesome. But people do like the community. You go out, you see what everyone else is doing. Usually we would stop by a rental project that somebody has on the go and see what they're doing. So that's very helpful for new people just wanting to get out and see what's going on, right? So that's one of the main tools I think that we've been missing, and hopefully we'll get back to that soon.
Cool. Well, I think we should welcome in Jared here. I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we'll ask him some questions. We're looking forward to this one. Got some fun stories lined up I know he's going to share. And he's always exciting to listen to. So with over 150 properties in his portfolio and having 400 plus transactions under his belt, Jared Hope is the owner of Edmonton's most comprehensive real estate investment and property management company. He's half of the real estate investing power couple, Jared and his wife, Krista Hope. Together, they've developed a no bullshit real estate coaching program that makes it easy for the average Canadian to own income properties. And Jared's expertise is born in experience and focuses on action-oriented, practical advice. He believes in cutting through the BS, evolving the way real estate investing education is provided, and supporting people in avoiding all the mistakes he learned the hard way over the past 16 years in his investing career. So welcome to the show, Jared. Hopefully that gives a bit of an intro. I know you've got lots more to share and lots of exciting stuff they've been through. So welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Thank you. It's like I wrote that bio myself.
I know you like it.
I didn't write it. I passed it off to one of my staff to write. And but yeah, you were about to say I like to drop a couple of F-bombs. I totally dropped the F-bombs.
Exactly.
Is there rules for the show? Am I not allowed to swear? Is it fair game?
Not really. I mean, you can do it if you want to. That's fine. I mean, there's not really any rules.
There's probably a limit. We're not on like the the explicit list or whatever on iTunes. There probably is a limit, but we want to make it exciting.
Get away with one or two, I think.
We'll get away with
it. Well, I might slip one in every once in a while, but
All good.
And today we're going to be getting real, and we're going to be talking about some horror stories. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think you've got a lot of lessons to share with us through these stories. So I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We're going to start out the way we always do, and just ask, or maybe just tell us quickly how you got involved in real estate investing.
Back in 2003, my dog is growling behind me. We just got a new puppy, and he's like 10 months old. So any little noise he growls at, it's so funny. So as a personal trainer, I played hockey. My wife owned a massage studio, and in 2003, we just, Krista grew up on a farm, and her parents were very entrepreneurial, and they just, she didn't really believe in working like for the man or having a job, and I played hockey my whole life. In 2003, we went to a real estate workshop in Edmonton, and she ended up signing us up for their membership, and I was so mad. I had no interest in doing real estate. We couldn't afford the $200 a month at that point in time, because that was the membership, and it was actually $300 for the both of us, and we just couldn't afford it. And I was so mad. I knew nothing about real estate. I always, Rich Dad Poor Dad, everyone read that book. And my dad was a phenomenal dad, but he had a poor dad mentality. Save your money, go to school, get good grades. Like, he was that guy. We didn't grow up poor. We weren't poor. But I was taught that, get a house and go to school, work for the same company for 25, 30 years, and that's your path. And Krista was taught something different. So she signed us up for the real estate program. And the first 6 months, I was right pissed off. I went to them because I was paying for these meetings, or we went to them. And I would sit in the back of the room with my hat on and back like this, and I'd just cross my arms, and in the back of the room, just judging all the speakers and judging all the people in the room. And 6 months go by, and we bought our first property. And that year we bought 3 properties, and which was cool. Like, whatever, made some mistakes and bought, looking back now, I would have done things a little bit differently. But the second year I bought 8 properties, and then the third year we had a killer year. We bought 64 properties. And to date, we've transacted over 482 now. I just bought one last week. And so we're 482 properties in, transactions, 152 properties. And so that's how we got started. And to be honest, I had no interest in being in real estate. I had no interest in being a landlord back in 2003.
So where was the turning point? I mean, you mentioned the first one that you bought. You must have started wearing your hat a little bit differently, like lifting it up every meeting a little bit more, and then
no.
Okay.
Yeah, no, funny question. I've been wearing a hat, man, forever. And back in 2017, we hired a company out of Vancouver to, there's a little bit of a rant, a sidebar, but we hired a company out of Vancouver to do some branding. And they're like, Jared, you have to change your image. Like, you have to do boss casual, and you have to wear these sports coats and dress shirts and, collared shirts, and you got to do your hair, and you got to shave. And I'm like, you know what? That's just not who I am. And so I wear a hat. I'd wear a hat on stage. Like, the last time I presented on stage, I wore a t-shirt and jeans. And, you either like me or you don't. And that's totally cool if you don't. However, I still have some really great lessons and tips to teach people, just from the trials and tribulations that I've gone through in my life. So, so what was the turning point? To be honest, probably 2008 was the biggest turning point, when I left my job. I was a personal trainer. I was doing $130,000, $140,000 a year in income from personal training back then, which was a lot of money. We had 2 young kids. We had our second kid in 2007. In 2008, we were both making really good money, and we left our jobs for real estate. And that was probably the turning point, because that actually set us on a downward spiral, because the market shifted in 2008. We had that financial crisis. And so, a lot of people will sit there and say, well, what shifted? What allowed you to, how'd you grow your portfolio so quick? Well, buying real estate is so easy, guys. In my opinion, it's super easy. It's maintaining it and sustaining it for longevity. That's the hard part. While having a well-balanced and successful marriage or relationship with your family, wife, or kids. That's the challenge that most people, I think, struggle with. Buying real estate, anyone can go buy a house. Buying the right house that works, that's a totally different story. So I would say 2008, when I left my job, that was the turning point, because I really had to, I didn't know if the properties I was buying were the right ones until 2008, when I realized they weren't.
So, I guess just real quick, because I want, like, because I feel like it's important, and a lot of people have the same mentality as you. Like, so what I was referencing was, you said you went to the back of these meetings, you pulled your hat down, you sort of sat at the back and didn't really want anything to do with it. But eventually, you guys went out and bought your first one. So was there a point where you were sitting in the back of there and you realized, okay, maybe these guys aren't just sprouting off baloney. Maybe they've got something real
Yeah.
to share here.
No, yes, and no. So, so I joined REIN, okay, the Real Estate Investment Network. Great program, a lot of great theory being taught. So I was sitting in the back of the room, and I'm a very competitive guy. So, like, let's be honest, most people in the rooms, whether it's REIN, Keyspire, REIG, Rockstar, iWin, Right Club, whatever the group is, it doesn't matter. They fill the room with 300, 400, 500 people. But the truth is, maybe 5-10% of them are actually doing anything of substantial quantity, right? So there might be people with 1, 2, or 3, but there's very few who have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 or more. So I was sitting in this room and watching people get these stupid pins, and a pin for 3, a pin for 8, a pin for 17, a pin for 100. I'm sitting there, I'm like, loser, loser, loser. I can do this. Not that they were losers, but I'm like, you know what? I'm so competitive. I'm like, I can go crush this. I can be better than all these guys. So I was playing the game to be seen as the best, because that was the environment that people put you in. That was this environment of REIN or REIG or Keyspire or whatever these groups are. That's what they do. And that's their business model. And I totally get it. But back in 2003, I never got it. I thought by being the guy, I was the guy. And so so the turning point for me, I guess, was when I realized that if I got 3 properties, I got recognition. And if I got 8, I got more recognition. If I got 17, I became a player. And when I got 100, I was the man. So that was my goal. I was out chasing pins, and it was detrimental to us in 2008. And most people, that's how people play the game. They play the game to get on a stage or get on a podcast, or to talk the talk about something they don't actually understand, because they haven't seen enough to go through it. And yeah, we'll go on a more of a rant here in a second.
So I can only assume some of that came from you're a very competitive athlete, obviously, and we can touch on that as much as you want. But obviously, you were a
totally
relatively successful hockey player
totally.
growing up in Canada. That's kind of makes you the man, right? So if you were in that mindset growing up, you obviously want to be. Does that help you with your competitive edge there in real estate? I can only imagine it would have in some
absolutely.
way.
Like, and I'm not like, every company works, because they all have their own concepts and the way of doing it. Me in that model I was super competitive, So I remember seeing this guy, Arlen Dolan. Arlen at that time had 100 and something properties, and he would show up. He had this messy hair, and him and I are buddies now. He had this messy hair and like 100 something properties, and he'd go up with these grubby sneakers. And he'd stand up to this mic. They had open mic back in the day, and he'd stand up to the mic, or success stories or something like that. And he'd say the success story about what he's doing, what he bought. And I'd be like, oh my God, what a fucking loser. I can way outperform him. And so that's how I ranked myself, So because I wanted to have the mic, I wanted to be the guy. I wanted people following me. I wanted to be, because I just wanted to be the best. That's how I was wired. So when you put me into an environment like that, I was chasing a pin. I wanted to be on stage. I remember in 2005, I ended up hiring Don Campbell as my mentor. And that year I bought 64 properties. And I remember telling Don in 2005 that I'm going to take his job and I'm going to own REIN. This is 2005. Like, what do I know? I was 26, 27 years old, and I'm sitting there telling Don I'm going to take a spot on stage. And fast forward to 2010, 2011, I was on stage with him for 10 years, 7 years, 8 years. And, but that's just how I was wired. I was wired to go for it all and to put in the time and work hard. And, you know, I've always had coaches. I've always had skating coaches and nutritionists and trainers. I've always had that in my life. So when it came time to build real estate, this is another mistake I think people make when you know, they try to build real estate on their own, or they try to follow multiple people. And, you know, they go listen to someone talk on stage for 30 minutes and they think that's enough for them to go build a business. And that's some of the mistakes that we're going to talk about today. And so they'll hop on a plane and fly to Regina because someone from Regina was talking about how great Regina is. So they'll hop on a plane from Toronto or Edmonton and fly to Regina and buy 10 properties. Well, that's not necessarily how to play the game. So, you know, but one thing with me is I always had coaches. So when I enlisted Don, I was super coachable, and, you know, it sped up my process. It sped up my journey in real estate.
And when you said in 2008 that it was almost detrimental to you, do you mean that like your competitive nature had you working too much, or like was there a part of your relationship that was suffering or something because
Oh, dude, everything suffered in 2008. So in 2008, the global recession hit, right? And at that point in time, I had about maybe I had 95, 98, 100, something like that, 100 properties. I'm not talking doors, I'm talking properties. Everyone else talks doors, I talk properties. And like titles, like it's so easy to get 15 doors, you guys. You can go get one building, that's 15 doors. That's one mortgage, that's one run at the gauntlet with the banks. To go get 100 mortgages, that's hard. And that's JVs, that's banks, that's you know, structure, that's so much stuff that has to be implemented. But in 2008, you know, I had 100, like I say, 95 to 100 properties. And, you know, when I left my job in like June 2008, and the financial recession started, you know, that global meltdown started in August 2008. And, you know, I was making, you know, we were used to living off of say $150,000, $180,000 a year at that time. And so when we left our job, we started living off our real estate portfolio. Now we were flush in our real estate portfolio. Excuse me. But at that time, as the market starts dropping, well, so do rents. We hit this global recession, the rents start dropping. So as rents start dropping, I start taking pay cuts. But I didn't take a pay cut. I just kept my income the same. So my income's still 150, 180 grand. My rents are dropping. My income in my company's dropping, so my burn rate is really, really high. So looking back on it now, I was buying the wrong properties. So in 2005, 6, 7, I was buying properties that were $50 to $100 a month cash flow. Some were zero cash flow, because at that point in time, I was seeing 32, 42, 55% appreciation. So I'm like, oh, we're good. I'm so banked. I got so much equity in these properties. But when I left my job, what people don't understand is, you know, living off your portfolio solely, if it's not set up right, you're like, I don't want to say you're destined to fail, but the fall could be really, really hard. Because if you're living off your portfolio and there's a shift in the market, you're directly impacted at it. You have no other source of revenue. So that was the lesson for us. In 2008, we realized that we bought 100, not 100, probably 60 of the wrong types of properties. They just didn't cash flow strong enough.
Where were those properties you were buying at that point? Have you been always in one or two areas, or have you been kind of scattered?
Yeah, no, like I'm out west, right? So I live in Kelowna now, but I invest in Edmonton. At that point in time, I probably had 70, 80 in maybe a little bit more in Grand Prairie, which is northern Alberta, which is an oil and gas town up there. Which back at the time, this is the other mistake that, you know, happens is, these are all horror stories, guys, right? So the other mistakes, you know, at that point in time, Rain was coming out with the top towns to invest: Edmonton, Grand Prairie, Calgary, Hamilton, Ottawa, all these top towns. Well, the problem with that's all theory. That's all bullshit. Because in those towns are certain communities you want to stay away from. Like you can't sit there and say, here's the top town to invest. Like, what I'd rather hear is, here's the best 10 communities in that town to be investing in. So what people do is they run to Edmonton, they run to Ottawa, they run to Waterloo, they run to, you know, Kelowna, wherever, and they buy in that city, but they don't understand the actual city itself and the demographics and the geographics of the town. So, you know, at that point in time, you know, I had a bunch in Edmonton and a bunch in Grand Prairie. And so in 2008, I ended up firing my property management company because they were doing a terrible job. And, so we just shouldn't say that. They just weren't doing a good enough job that I wanted. Plus I had to save some income somehow. Like I was paying them $40,000-$50,000 a month, maybe more, in management fees. So in 2008, as my income starts dropping, I had to make money. So I let my management company go and we started self-managing our portfolio.
That sounds like a horror story right there to me.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Like, man, guys, I have so many stories just from the property management side, from shootings to strippers to drugs to guys hiding pot plants on me to like kicking people out, seizing cars and trucks. Like, I've had so many stories.
But I think we got to get into some of those pretty soon. I think because I think what I'd like to hear is where you're at a bit today, and then let's get into some of those. Those are exciting topics.
Yeah, no,
some funny stories,
and they're all funny. I look back. I don't. Chris, my wife and I went out for dinner the other night, and she's like, what would you do differently about our lives? And I said nothing. Like we had some hard times in 2008 to 2010. That was a hard time that financially, business wise. We reset, we restructured. We didn't really I wasn't really doing any personal development. That at that time I was just ego driving me. Krista started doing personal development work around, well, she's always done it, but really in 2010, she's really kicked it in. 2015, our relationship hit a really rock bottom. I was drinking. Like, man, we should have been divorced come 2015. And it was just a hard time. And, in 2015, we got married in 2003. By 2015, 12 years later, we just shifted. We had kids, we had a successful business that we've turned around twice, 2 or 3 times. And we just drifted apart because, I had someone ask me the other day, why'd you marry Krista? That's my wife. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter why I married her. The question is, why are we still together? That's the question that we have to be asking, is why do I continue to choose Krista? Why does she continue to choose me every single day? Because we have options. She has an option to leave. I have an option to leave. Why we got married 13 years ago doesn't matter, because we're different people. And we didn't realize that until 2015, when we just drifted apart so much. And because I was so focused on the business and she was so focused on the kids. That's what real estate did. That's how we set up our business, and that was the impact to it. To where we are today, like you asked, Sandy, like, dude, life is so good, man. Like, we live in Kelowna. We moved here 5 years ago. We're trying to move to the water right now, onto the lake. And, we have 2 great kids. They're 15 and 13 years old. They're amazing at hockey. They're just amazing kids. They understand my business, our business, like the way they interact, the way they communicate, I can rant forever, guys. Our kids see a psychologist, okay? And we have a family shrink, we call her name's Patty, and we go see Patty, and we started with our kids with Patty a number of years ago. And the reason why we started taking the kids to Patty, Chris and I go see Patty every month or every couple months. But the reason why we started taking the kids is because it's really important to teach the kids to ask for help when they need it, versus thinking that they have to do it on their own. So this is something that I learned back in hockey, my hockey days. When I was playing hockey, I always had a coach, not just a head coach, not just an assistant coach, but I also had personal trainers. I had nutritionists, I had psychologists, I had skating coaches, I had skills coaches. Like, I had all the coaches, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm just like, so now when I want to grow my business, right now I have a coach out of LA. His name is John Wineland. I've had coaches for years, so I'm super coachable. Whereas most people are not super coachable because they've never been taught how to be coachable. So we're teaching our kids at a very young age how to be coachable. So hopefully when they get older, they can reach out when they need it, whether it's in relationship, whether it's in work, whether it's in business, personal development, career, whatever it is. We want them to be able to reach out and ask for help. That's where we are today.
Cool. What about then in the real estate side of things? Obviously, have you kept going at the same pace as you were early on, or has that changed up year to year? And how's that transition?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty impossible to hold at 64 a year. Excuse me. I think that's next to impossible. last year we did, so in 2010, when we come out of the recession, the global recession, we have to change the structure of our business. Because we were like, seriously guys, like I was losing $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 a month from 2008 to 2010. I share this story all the time. I had a wad of cash in the safe. We were flush in the bank. We were paying our JV partners just bank every single quarter. We were cutting checks, $20,000, $25,000 of positive cash flow. I've raised $20 million worth of JV money over the years, and all of it was done wrong. Like, man, good. I think we have a topic of JV horror stories, so we'll get into that. But in 2011, I bought my first house to flip, and not knowing what I was doing, I bought this house to flip, and it worked out good. I bought it for $152,000, sold it for $225,000. It was great. Made some money there. The second house I bought for $200,000, sold it for $375,000. But I didn't like that one. I still made some money, but that one took about 4 months to sell. And the reason why it took 4 months to sell is because people were coming in. They didn't like the direction of the backyard. They didn't like the countertop I picked. They didn't like the color of the paint. They didn't like the backsplash tile. They didn't like the apple tree in the backyard. Because what I was doing was I was selling a home, and people tie certain emotion, whatever emotion they have, into their place of like their home. So I quickly, after that one, I realized that I don't want to sell homes for people. I don't do homes. I do rentals, because I know the rental business inside and out. So after the second one, we just started buying houses and making them legal suites. So to date, I've done about 150 of these. So, so I keep every fourth, every fifth one kind of thing. But then we sell all the rest. So I've done about 150 of them since 2011. So I'm still buying, but I'm buying differently. I'm not buying to hold, like I'm looking at buying this cool new Jeep, this old Bronco. It's like 1970 Bronco, and it's 85 grand or 90 grand. No, it's 90 grand. And I put it on Facebook saying, hey, do I buy this thing? It's super cool. And someone put a post saying, hey, why don't you just buy a house with that money and use the cash flow from the house to pay for the Jeep? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea if it was 15 years ago. But I'm done with acquiring properties. Like, I have $40 million worth of real estate. I have about 6 or 7 houses clear title. I have another 15 houses that are under $50,000 of debt. Like I'm at the end of the game, where now it's time to play and have some fun. And so I'm done building the asset base, because I already have so much. Like, we do $278,000 a month in rents. And now I'm just trying to buy down my debt as fast as possible. So we buy the houses, we renovate them, and then every time I sell it, I take that cash from the sale and I'm starting to pay down my debts. So that's how I'm buying down my debts so fast.
I mean, I guess you could have just answered, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's what I've already done. But did you end up buying the truck or not?
No, I am. So I just had, like, this just happened like the other day. You got to see this Jeep. It's so deadly. I'll post it to my Facebook page if anyone wants to see it. It's actually on my Instagram already, but it's just an old school Bronco, rag top, old bench seats in the back, like just, little 4 or 5 speed. It's just amazing. So no, I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to.
Very good. Okay. Let's get into some horror stories here.
Yeah.
We're going to start out. We're going to hit them hard right off the bat. So what do you think is the biggest mistake you've made so far in real estate?
The biggest mistake I've made, I made lots. Excuse me. Oh man. I know I just sent you an email with all this, but now I got more stuff coming to me. Number one mistake is thinking I could do it all by myself. That was a big mistake. Another big mistake I would have done is fudging my numbers. So, like, I would go buy a property and I was taught to, here's the percentages that you use. Here's the rent and minus mortgage, taxes, insurance, management fees, blah, blah, blah. And then I would say, okay, well, this property is 8 years old and it's in great shape and everything's done. So I'm going to take the repairs and maintenance and take it from 8% and I'm going to make it 2%. Property management, oh, I'm going to impeccably property management. So I'm not going to put the 10% in. I'm going to put 0. So I would be able to, I was so good, I'd take a negative cash flowing property and turn it into a positive cash flowing property like that within the stroke of a pen. And next thing you know, I'd buy the property. So that was another mistake. Man, I got lots.
That's probably one of the bigger ones, I would say. And a lot of people are guilty of that. I mean,
totally.
I'll sometimes even do it now, like on the initial spreadsheet, and then kind of look back and go on it and go, you know what? No, we should probably change some of these numbers.
Yeah.
Right? So,
like on that note, I was at a workshop for this organization a couple of years ago, and they were telling people out of Vancouver, it's okay to buy properties at a negative 50 or a negative 100 or a negative $150 a month cash flow. It was okay because you're going to get appreciation and you're going to get mortgage pay down. That was their story. And I'm sitting in this room, I'm like, no. So I went on this big rant on social media 2 years ago saying, do not ever buy a negative cash flowing property. It will destroy you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And, and that was a lesson that I taught myself because I was buying negative cash flowing properties. And then, like I always believe, I was taught something different, but I always believe that you always buy for cash flow first. And you want to talk about big mistakes. This is one of them. I wasn't buying for cash flow. You always buy for cash flow. And then the second thing you buy for is mortgage pay down. Because those two things you can kind of guarantee those. You can work those around and always have that. The third thing you buy for is appreciation. That's the unknown. No one predicted 2008, 9, 10, or very few people did. No one predicted a pandemic. What's the outcome of the pandemic? We still don't know, you guys. Once the CERB comes off, there's something like 800,000 or 1 million people have deferred their mortgages. Once that comes off, these banks are predicting that foreclosures are going to go up once these deferrals come back. These deferrals are going to come back. So all of these people who've deferred their mortgages, once again, this is all some of the big lessons that I've learned. But all these people who've deferred their mortgages, I am one of them. I've deferred about 50 mortgages. I have a different plan for deferring them than others. But so all these people defer their mortgages. 6 months later, their mortgage payments start back up. Well, what happens? Well, their payments are now $100 or $200 higher. Their payments not the same. So they're in a negative cash flowing position. 6 months later, mortgages come back on, and now they're in a worse negative cash flowing position. In Ontario, you can only raise rents, 2%, 2 point something percent. So if rents drop $500 because vacancy rate, that's what's going to happen. I don't want to say that's what's going to happen, but that's a possibility of what could happen, a strong possibility. So if rents drop $500, deferral rates go up, or your payment goes up $200, it's going to take you 20 years to recover at 2% increases. And that's not including property taxes that are going to go up. So if you're not buying for cash flow, I think you're playing with fire. And that's what I was doing.
Yeah, those are all really good points here. And I think that, I don't think people are actually going to understand the impact of how those things affected you, really, because you've managed to get through them. So what tactics, let's talk about that. What tactics did you use to overcome these things?
Oh, dude. In 2010, that coming out of the 2008-9 recession, we restructured, out of all the years I've been doing real estate, I've only sold out of my buy and hold. I've always turned properties over. I bought properties, renovated them, sold them. I've been doing that since 2010, 2011. But I've always had my holding properties. I've always had them. And out of those properties, I've maybe have sold 3 over the last however many years. When I buy a property, it's okay, it's going in this box, which is my hold. It's going in this box, which is my turnover. And in 2008, coming out of it, we had to restructure stuff. So in 2010, we started flipping, because we have to drive revenue. We started up our property our first creation, our first run at our property management company. which back then was called Landlord Rescue, which is now called Tilt Property Group. You know, we had to get liquid because what I realized was my portfolio was not recession proof. So one of the mistakes that another mistake that I did is every 5 years I was refinancing my portfolio. So to this day, I don't refinance my portfolio. I will never refinance my portfolio. I will never take equity out of my portfolio because it's a tale of the two portfolios. And these are the two portfolios. I have one portfolio called Hope Properties. My last name's Hope, so Hope Properties. I have about 55 properties in that portfolio. I have, in 2003, I started buying. In 2008, I refinanced, I think, 5 or 8 of them, but the rest I've never touched. I have another portfolio, let's call it JP, because I have a partner. I had a partner in there. I just bought him out. We refinanced, and we had about 30 properties in there. We've refinanced those ones every 5 years. So in 2008, we refinanced it, and in 2015, we refinanced it. So what happened in 2008, recession comes, all that cash flow that we bought, or all that mortgages we bought down, we brought it back up. Rents came down, so we were losing money. Fast forward to 2015 and 2016, we had another recession here in Alberta. So the same thing happened. So yes, we were pulling out money. I was taking that money, paying down my whole property portfolio. My partner was taking that money, and who knows I don't know what he was doing with it. So we kept on running tight, leveraged out. So what people need to understand is in real estate is after 5 years, you don't have enough mortgage pay down to experience an increase in cash flow. It just doesn't happen because banks shorten your amortization rate along with the payment. So your payment actually stays relatively consistent after 5 years. After 10 years though, because your first 5 years, first 10 years, most of your payment goes to your interest, yeah? So after, excuse me. So after 10 years, you have enough principal pay down that when you refinance, or sorry, when you renew your mortgage, you have enough principal pay down that you'll actually see a $200 or $300 drop in rent. That's the rounding point. That's the fence that you have to climb. So back to the whole property portfolio, never refinanced it. So after 10 years, so that puts us to 2013, we were making bank from after 2013. Because in this 50 property portfolio, it was like 50% paid off because we were just hammering debt. So then what we did is I renewed all my mortgages, and my payments could have went from $1,000 to $700, for example, but I kept my payments at $1,000. So now I was paying an additional $300 times 50 properties, say. Numbers were different all over the place, but let's use that for kind of a snapshot picture. So we reduced the $300, but we kept the payments at $300 times 50. So all of a sudden, forward fast 5 years later, which is 2018, I renew my mortgages again. Now I just built a bigger gap to the point where now we're just so flush with cash flow from whole properties. This other portfolio has almost the same amount of debt in it that we did back in 2003. My payment's the same, my leverage is the same, everything's the same. I have a JV partner in one of these, and this is a long story, I know, but I have a JV partner in one of these portfolios as well. So I have one JV partner left. I called him up a little while ago. He's like, what the heck, man? How do we sell these things? We can't sell these things. You know, you're telling me that if we sell them, we're going to be break even? Well, no, that's not true because I've refinanced them 3 times. I've remortgaged them. I've pulled the equity out 3 times. I'm like, dude, I've paid you $400,000 because he gets half. I'm like, dude, I've paid you $300,000 or $400,000 over the last 15 years, but they don't remember that. All they see is here's what it's worth. Here's what we owe. When we sell, I lost money. You know, so there's so many rules with how to run a JV and how to structure the JV that prevents problems 15 years ago. And one of them is don't refinance your properties.
Well, I think that's sort of multi-tiered in that when you're in growth phase, obviously that can be very powerful, right?
Totally.
And even for what you were saying is you took the payouts from remortgaging and used it on your other portfolio where maybe someone else might not do that, but you did the smart thing. So in a way, that was a very powerful tool for you.
Totally.
You know, yeah, being able to
I-
take that money from one side and put it to use on the other side.
Like I would do it a little bit different. If I was handing out checks again, I would go back to my JV partner and say, listen, Mr. JV partner, listen, Rob and Sandy, listen, man, guys, I would love to cut you a quarterly check every year. That's super cool. It feels so good. But what we're going to do is this instead. We're going to wait to the end of the year. And at the end of the year, we're going to have $20,000 or we're going to have $50,000 in this bank account. And we're going to take 50% of it and we're going to pay 50% of that out. The other 50% is going to stay in the bank and we're just going to leave it there. And we're not going to touch it. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to leave that there. That's, because that's protecting the portfolio. That's going to prevent cash calls. It's going to keep, it's going to keep them sane because they're going to get some return on their money. But more importantly, it protects the portfolio. The other thing I would probably do, like I'm all for leverage. Like I don't want people to hear this and say, oh, I don't want to refinance to build. Yeah, it's okay to refinance and build your portfolio. But I think there's a tipping point, like I was doing it all the time, which leveraged the shit out of us. Leveraging to grow is fine. Leveraging and buying the right properties is fine. But at some point in time, there has to come a tipping point where it's like, okay, I've done enough. Now I have to change the way I'm buying or change the way I'm building my portfolio to protect the assets. Because, in 2008, guys, I saw 2008, 9, 10, I saw so many people who had 20, 30, 40, 50 properties go bankrupt. And, I look at the rooms I used to hang out in and the rooms I'd hang out in, come 2010, 11, all the big players, not all of them, but a lot of them were gone. A lot of the people I thought were big players were gone. And in 2016, 17, same thing in Alberta. And I guarantee you in 2 years, there will be people who have 30, 40, 50 properties that will not be in the scene anymore because they play the game wrong. They're too leveraged. So I just don't believe in leverage anymore. Too much leverage. Let me say that again. I love leverage because I think that's how you have to play the game. But there comes a time where it's like, I got to change the way I'm playing it.
Yeah, and I guess it'd be like taking each one into sort of its own consideration because, I was at a. Here's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Last summer, we did a BREI. We added a basement suite, and then when we refinanced, we were able to get a bunch of money back out of the property, right on top.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my partner, why don't we just go for we'll just go for even, right? Get our money back and leave the rest. And he's like, heck no. Why would we do that? Look, we get extra money for buying the house. We're not going to do that. So, I think if I had pushed a little bit harder, we probably could have done that. And I think that would be the safe way to go on something like that. Right.
That's a great point, Rob, because I have coaching clients and one of my coaching clients, they're doing the BREI. And I love the BREI. I love the BREI method. A problem with the BREI is because you don't really know what the future value is. You're assuming it, but you don't really know. You're at the mercy of the market. And I'll get into that in a second. But I have this coaching client. She's in her 50s, mid 50s, and so her level of risk should be lower than our level of risk, and because her runway is shorter to earn it back if she loses anything. And her level of comfort's different. Her risk factors are different. Her desired outcomes are different. She's, typically at 55, 60, you're slowing down in age. So you want more cash flow, more cash to play with. And so what I told her is I said, listen, instead of refinancing and pulling 80% out, refinance it and pull like 65% out and leave 40, 35, 40% of equity in the house, because now your cash flow is going to be a lot higher. And now instead of having to refinance and keeping really thin on your cash flow, now just go do 3 or 4 of these, get your cash flow to that $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and then retire. And then you're good, because now you're not at the risk of the market. You're protected. Your income's not going to change if the market shifts. Your lifestyle's not going to change if anything happens. And now, you guys, you're pandemic proof. versus recession proof. Now there's a whole new, there's no such thing, you know, I used to try to be recession proof. And going into the pandemic, I'm like, holy shit. Like I was shitting my pants. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm going to go tits up right now. But now my portfolio is pandemic proof. And that was the advice I gave to this client. So that'd be the exact advice I gave to you. I don't know if I would do every one like that, but why not do every second one like that? Where you're building this big brother, you're building this bodyguard that's going to protect your portfolio, which protects your life. It's not about protecting your portfolio. It's about protecting your lifestyle and your life. That's what real estate does.
And I guess there's not really any cut and dry. We can't just say, here's the answer to that question and here's the answer. It's more of like you were talking about being coachable. And so, you know, in that person's specific case that you were just talking about, your coaching client, that might have been the best thing for her to do, where it might be different for somebody else. It all just depends on where they're at and if they're able to take that, good advice and run with it.
So this is why I think people need coaches versus going to rooms. So you go to a room and everyone's in that room to learn and listen and build a business. So they'll sit there and hear, you know, like there's no clear-cut way how to do it. I have my way of doing it. And, you know, so the mistake I made back in the day when I was presenting, I was very condescending. Like it's like I was telling people this was the only way to do it. When what I've realized is my way is just my way. Your way is your way, Sandy's way is Sandy's way, and John's way is John's way, and so on and so on. But the mistake people make when they go to a room and they listen to 10 speakers in a day, for example, or in a weekend, is they try to follow each and every one of them. And they sit there and they get, oh my God, that's how you do it. Oh my God, that's how you do it. No, that's how you do it. So they kind of are chasing a squirrel. Whereas if you had a coach, mentor, like I did back in 2005, like my clients are using me for, is our job is to say, listen, okay, I get all that. Here's the path you need to stay on. You know, like go learn this, but here's plan A, plan B, plan C. Here's your main tool. Maybe your main tool is a BREI. Maybe your main tool is a buy and hold. Maybe your main tool is JVs. Maybe your main tool is, you know, renovate and flip. Who knows? But you need the guidance, because if an untrained mind makes up their own result, it creates their own path. So that's one of the benefits of following somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that sort of falls into the thing that Sandy and I get asked this question all the time. It's like, how do you structure a JV deal? Tell us.
Yeah, totally.
How is this done?
There's only one way.
Yeah. And so let's use that to transition into the JV horror stories then. So yeah. I know that you had something you wanted to touch on as far as that goes.
Oh man, once again, I got lots. You know, like one big horror story is I refinance properties on a regular basis, and for my JVs, because I felt obligated to, make them money, and I felt obligated for them not to lose. And so by refinancing the properties and getting their money back, you know, I thought that was the right way to do it. What I've realized over the years is it's a balancing act of, you know, here's some money back that covers, because most JVs, let's face it, most JVs are not using cash to invest, they're using a line of credits. And so I do feel that onus is on me a little bit to have the portfolio cover some of those payments, if not all those payments. So now the way I restructured that is, you know, I'll take 50%, like I was sharing earlier, I'll take 50%, leave in the bank, the other 50% gets split 50-50. And then that 50% of that 50% that remains in the bank, we'll target one property and we'll just start buying down the debt for that one property. Another change that I've made is I don't do 5-year deals anymore. I was taught a long time ago to do 5-year joint venture deals. So when we signed a contract, it was a 5-year deal. Now I do 10 to 12-year deals, not 5-year deals. And then at the 8-year mark, I analyze the portfolio to see if there's any properties that can move out. Because it's called culling the herd. So we own a buffalo ranch up in northern Alberta with my in-laws. We have a bunch of bison. And, you know, I started watching my father-in-law back in 2010. We're sitting around the dinner and he's like, hey, you know, we got to cull the herd. I'm like, well, what does that mean? You know, so he's getting rid of the old cows. And because the old cows will produce at say 70%. So 70% of the time they'll have a calf. Whereas the younger cows will produce at 100% or 95%. So he's getting rid of the old cows and bringing in the new cows to increase his herd. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, that makes total sense. So at the 8-year mark, I'll sit there with my JV and we'll cull the herd if we can. So we'll sit there and say, okay, you know what, this one's not producing like it used to, or this one's at, you know, this still has wow factor, but in about 5 years, we have to replace furnaces, windows, roofs, some big expenses. We're going to cull that out right now. We're going to take that mortgage, we're going to port it to a new house, because you can port mortgages easier than you can requalify for mortgages or to qualify for a new mortgage. So we're going to port that mortgage over here to this new house that's going to have higher cash flow, less long-term expenses. So instead of doing a 5-year term, what I've realized with 5-year terms is I'm at the effect and I'm at the mercy of their life. So if things change in 5 years and they come back and say, I need to sell, I need out, I need my money back in 5 years, and if I'm not ready to sell, I'm screwed. So if I do a 10, 12 year, I've changed the thought process and the energy around that contract so that they know it's a 10-year, 12-year contract. So they actually don't expect to get out for 10 to 12 years. So what that does is it puts me more in control out of managing and stewarding the success of the portfolio, which guarantees almost a good outcome for my JV partner. Because if I can keep them in for 12 years, never refinance, I've got mortgage pay down over the next 12 years at an average of $8,000, $9,000 a year. So guaranteed, I got their money back at the worst case scenario. After 5 years, you don't have that guarantee. So the biggest takeaway that I've learned over the years is that is a 10, 12-year JV window. And then, man, dude, I've taken on JVs just for the sake of taking on JVs, and I've taken on the wrong JVs. I've taken on JVs that thought they knew more than me. You know, like it's been tough dealing with JV partners, to the point where I'm very strict on the JV that I take on now. They have to have X amount of capital. They have to have, you know, little to no involvement in the portfolio. They have to know how to read a financial statement, because lots of people don't know how to read financial statements. And at the end of the day, they have to have the same core values as me and my family. So those are some big takeaways for joint venture structuring.
Yeah, those are helpful. Those are awesome. Really like those. Those are a couple different ones there than we typically hear. So that's really cool to hear. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, once again, it's just my way. You know, it's just my way of doing things over the years that I've been burnt by, and I've been, you know, I've taken some hard lessons from JVs over the years.
Well, I think the tough thing is that, you know, people that haven't done any JV deals, especially that are listening to this, are going to say, well, you know, I would just be happy if someone was going to give me money. And, you know, that's again, like, even the wrong way to start looking for joint venture partners in the first place is more, you're providing an opportunity to them. If they want to take it, then you can structure it with all those things in place that you've said, you know, and it's not going to be any less desirable than it would be if you said, you know, you're going to have more control over it or whatever. You're going to find the right person as long as the deal's good.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really what people got to focus on, especially if they're just starting out, is the deal that I have good enough that regardless of if I set this up so that it's going to be less of a headache down the road and set me up for learning how to structure these going forward, then, you know, you're not going to have any trouble finding it. And it's not asking for money, it's offering opportunity, right?
Yeah, you know, I would even go one step further. I get it. I totally get what you're saying. I think I would maybe disagree with you a little bit on that. I think people, I don't think it's about the deal, to be honest with you. Like, I think the deal is like the bodyguard, it's the protector that has to be there, like that. But that speaks to the integrity of me or you or the JV partner, the actual, you know, the real estate expert bringing the deal. That speaks to their integrity. You know, like, there's groups out there that are, you know, they'll sit there and say, fear stops most people from doing anything. You know, fear, you have to go conquer the fear of the potential money person. You got to go solve all of their fear. That's all bullshit, to be totally honest with you, because people do business with people they trust, plain and simple. And I could have the most knowledge in the world, But yet, Rob, you're the most friendliest guy. You're so trustworthy, and your knowledge base is smaller. But you're super trustable to that potential person. They'll do business with you versus doing business with me. People do business with people they trust the most. And that's emotion. So people do, as much as they try to make a business decision, keep it all simple. Here's all the facts. Emotion comes in. And what I teach my clients is you have to, I don't want to say feed, but you have to build off of that emotion that they have and enter through trust and accountability and loyalty and relatability, because the product is going to sell itself. The product is going to tie all of these emotions that this person has about you, and the product's going to solidify it. It's going to close the deal for you. Like I see people all the time. I have clients all the time that come in and say, I want to start branding. I want to start marketing. I want to start putting stuff on Facebook. I want to start doing. I'm like, why? What's the point? I need JV clients. No, that's not how you're going to get JV client. Putting a deal up and saying, hey, I need an investor. That doesn't work because you have no credibility. Let's go work at building credibility with your inner circle, that they trust you and they truly believe that if they give you $100,000, that you're going to act in the best interest of them with it. That is what people need to work on. And that starts with understanding what your why is, what your purpose is, what your calling is, understanding what your client's purpose is and what their why is and what they want out of it. It's not here's the property and here's how we're going to solve everything, what people teach. It's about understanding how you show up is either repelling or attracting a JV partner. Work on how you show up, because that is what brings in the people to do business with you, whether it's shoes, whether it's cars, whether it's houses, money, whatever it is. It's how you show up. You want to go meet a girl or meet a spouse. Well, look how you show up. Look where you're showing up. Look how you're interacting and how you communicate. Are you trustworthy? That is what brings in a partner, not the deal, I think.
I think very well said.
I was hoping you disagree. Let's get some action.
Yeah, like I get it.
It's such a complicated thing, and I was more sort of alluding to the fact that like having the deal will build confidence in the person, right? And then they're not necessarily feeling like they're asking for money to just go out and find something. That was more the idea of just believing in yourself. And I mean, all of those other things that you were talking about definitely come into play, like how a person's going to I have no idea necessarily how each individual is going to handle someone else's money and whether they're going to do it with integrity or not. But that's just an assumption that I'm taking on my part as far as a JV agreement goes, is that whoever's handling the money is going to do that in a ethical fashion. But I guess that's not always the case either.
No, dude, it's like there's so many douchebags out there, man. Like there's so many people who are lacking integrity, and finding that right JV partner to align with you is tough. And it's just in saying all of that though, if I were building my portfolio again, I would 100% do it with all JVs. Like JV partners structured my way, like the way I do it. If I were doing it again, all my JVs would have success. Like over the years, I've had 10 JV partners, and I can only think of one JV partner that has had success in real estate and would walk away saying, yeah, that was a win. That was good. All the other JVs, I still have one, but all the other JVs, I bet you all of them would never get back into real estate because the 5-year plan set them up wrong. I was paying cash flow wrong. It was all structured wrong. So one guy I was paying interest payments for, the other guy I wasn't. There's just no structure to it. Whereas now, if I were to build my portfolio again, I would 100% do it with their money versus using my money. But I would almost, like I say, I'd stretch it out and I'd force success onto these JV partners just by extending the timelines.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're getting a little long here, but I want to talk about your coaching course. Tell us a little bit about that. You've just launched a new coaching course, right?
Yeah, we've been doing it for about 3 years, but we've been running it through Tilt, whereas now we're actually branding the new website, which will be launched in a couple months. We've put about 55, 60 clients through it. So it's Krista and I. So Krista, everyone looks at me like I'm the face of the company. I'm the face of the brand. I'm the face of the real estate. But the truth is, Chris and I have done it together. She started us on the journey. And, the easiest way I can summarize it is I help people become millionaires. Krista helps them maintain, their money and their asset and their wealth. And so Krista is one of the best personal coaches I've ever met in my life. And the mistake people make is, they don't focus on both. They'll focus on one or the other. And whereas what we do is it's kind of like a 60-40 split. It's going to be, sometimes 60% real estate, sometimes 60% growth and personal development. It's all couple work. If you're single, you can still do it too, but it's husband and wife, because we believe that in order to have the success in real estate, both people have to be doing it. Both people don't have to be buying the property, but both people should be along for the ride. And so that's how to communicate, how to structure it, how to set it up. So you both are involved and you're both still, speaking the same language and ultimately getting, the love that you want out of life. So that's the coaching program.
Okay. So where would they go to learn about that?
Right now you can go to tiltgroup.ca. And then there's going to be a tab that says investments coaching. So you can click that tab. And then in a couple months, our Jared and Krista hope.com will be up and running. We're just in the process of doing vids and pictures and stuff like that for the website.
Okay, cool. Looking forward to that. And anyone that missed that can go to the show notes, and the link will be there.
Rob, before we sign off, I saw a list of really interesting property management stories. Can we get one kind of crazy, interesting? There's stuff about knives, there's stuff about strippers.
Can I tell you too?
Stuff like that.
Okay, so I have this house in Grand Prairie. So in 2008, I take over the management of this property. And I knew nothing. I was just this young, cocky kid. And I take over the management of this property, and I rent out to 5 strippers. And I'm just like, okay, they're in, they pay cash, they're hot, this is perfect. And so whatever. So I was up in GP a few months later, checking on the house, and I left him a notice on the door saying I was going to come back tomorrow. So I come back the next day to do an inspection, and as I knock on the door, and all these cars are in the parking lot or on their driveway, and it's a duplex. I knock on the door, and no one answered. I knock on the door, open it up. I'm like, hello, Jared Hope here. I left a notice, and I can hear some music playing, but I'm like, no one's home. That's what I thought, because no one answered the door. And it was a bi-level, so there's 6 stairs up, 6 stairs down. I walk inside, I walk up the stairs, and there are 5 naked girls on the couches, and there's Coke, there's booze, there's toys, there's all this stuff. And I walk in there, I'm like, yeah, I'll just come back tomorrow. Like, it was like, I walked out of there, I'm like, that was so cool. But I'm like, yeah, I can't rent those. I can't rent. Like, I got to do a better job screening properties. Like, they're screening tenants. So that's one. I'm going to share 3. I have another one. I bought this house. It's my second house I ever bought. I knew nothing about landlording. And I rented. So we bought this house. It had blue windows and all this other stuff. So we were fixing it. So my wife and I were out there painting the windows, and, I was fixing the floor and changing the toilets, and we're doing some work to it, lipstick and rouge stuff. And this lady, and we had this big post-it note in the window saying, hey, 3-bedroom main floor, here's the rent. Like, everything was written down on this post-it note in the window. This van pulls up, and this lady gets out. This blue van pulls up, and this lady gets out wearing a red dress and a cross on her necklace, and she was toting along 3 little kids. And her name was Rosa. And Rosa comes up to me, and she's like, hey, I just want to rent your house. We just came from church. It was a Sunday. We just came from church. My kids were in Sunday school. My husband, Eric and Rosa, he just lost his job, but we're just restarting out, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, they just came from church. Nice score. God sent them my way. Rented to them. 8 months later, they were behind about 3 months on rent. Finally, this one night I went there at 8:00 at night, and I was so mad because I was getting the runaround from Eric and Rosa. Knocked on their door, He opened up the door. I reached in, I grabbed him by his ear, and I pulled him out. Like, I pulled him out of the house. And I told him that, I said, dude, if I'm going to come back in 2 hours and if you're not gone, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm probably going to kick the shit out of you. Came back 2 hours later. Everything was gone out of the house. Thank God. Because I really don't know what I would have done. It was terrible. Third story. I had this client, this tenant.
Is that how you handle things still? Is that your property?
No. No, man. No, dude, it was, you know what? I just didn't know anything. I didn't understand the Tenant Act. I didn't understand rules and regulations. I didn't know how to interact with people. To me, they were stealing from me.
Right.
And I was so emotional. It was just pure emotion versus, the Tenant Act in Alberta is very good. Like, I can kick someone out in 14 days. Like, there's no N5s and R4s or whatever you guys have in Ontario. We don't have that stuff in Alberta. It's literally the Wild West. I can get someone out in 14 days. And anyways, I have this house up in GP. This guy's having a great tenant. This guy was an amazing tenant. I have another one I can share with you too. This guy was an amazing tenant, and he had a party. And at this party, some guy at this party pulls out a knife. And whatever, it's like 2 a.m, right? 1 a.m, pulls out a knife. Anyways, they kick him out. So they kick this guy out, whatever. They continue to party, and at about 5:30 in the morning, this guy rolls back. Everyone's passed out. This guy rolls back to the house, knocks on the door, and as he comes to the door, as my tenant comes to the door, there's a big window in the door. It's all frosted, but so you can see the shadow coming up. My tenant goes to grab the door, and a bullet goes through and shoots him in the stomach. Guy kicks open the door, pop, 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 starts shooting. Didn't hurt, didn't kill anybody, but got my tenant. Guy takes off. So this guy that they kicked out was high and all this other stuff, came back with a gun and started popping people, right? So that's a horror story. Here's the best horror story, okay?
I don't know if you could top that one. Right?
That's pretty intense. Yeah, that's intense.
No, this one's a good one. So in 2008, I have a tenant that didn't pay rent, got behind, gave them a notice, and 9 times out of 10 they leave. 9 times out of 10, here's your notice, they just leave, because in Alberta we can just take the property, right? And or mostly take it. And so I gave the notice, I come back, she's not gone after 14 days, so I changed the locks. And so she comes back, so I waited till she was gone to work, I changed the locks. And once again, I don't really know the Tenant Act at this point in time, because I've never had to really go the distance with the tenant. And so I changed the lock. She comes back, she calls the police. Police come, and the police don't really have a jurisdiction, any rights with the Landlord Tenant Act. Like, they can't, if there's not abuse or violence, they don't know the laws for the Tenant Act. So the police come in, they're like, no, you got to give her back the keys. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, there's no crime, there's no abuse, there's no weapons. Like, just get out of here. Like, you don't know what you're talking about to this police officer, this RCMP. Anyways, make a long story short, I give the keys back because the police officer said I had to. I didn't know that. And so I give the keys back, and the tenant says to the cop tells me that he's like, I guarantee you, she guarantees she'll be out tomorrow by 5 o'clock. So the next day comes, I gave her an extra day. So I go back the next day. So 2 days later, she's gone, which is awesome. But I open up the door to the side of the house. So it's a bi-level again. I open up the door, I go 4 or 5 steps down, 2 feet of water in my basement. She plugged the drain, she cut all my lines, plugged the tubs, ran the tubs, everything was overflowing. So I'm like, oh my God, like panicking, right? I go upstairs, my floor is collapsed into the basement. That's how much water, it just saturated everything. $178,000 worth of damage to my property.
Insurance claim?
Insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
So the best part about that is I don't real insurance. My insurance covered the lost rent for 8 months. I have a brand new product. That was in 2008. So that's 12 years old. I got everything new. Everything was new. It's a brand new house. My value went up. I refinanced that property, bought the property next door to it. So now I own both sides. It was great. That was a terrible experience, but it worked out.
Some of the best stories is property. If you have property management experience, there's amazing stories there. We have some. My wife Kate runs our management company. It's crazy. Some of the stuff you come home with is some of the best stories in life, I would say.
Oh my God! I had a tenant the other day call me up. So the shower door broke off of one of my places, and this tenant deals with the staff. I don't deal with it anymore. But my staff called me up. They're like, "Yeah, your tenant doesn't want to pay July rent," and I'm like, "Why? Like, what's going on?" Well, the shower door broke off. So he feels that it's, he shouldn't have to pay rent. Now rent's like $3,800. And I'm like, no, because he broke it, first of all. And secondly, tell him if that's the case, I will prorate a reduced rent. And so my staff are like, okay, well, what's the prorated rent? I'm like, take 1 cent off. So take off 1 penny off of his rent, and that's the prorated rent that he doesn't have to pay. It's such bullshit. Tenants do the funniest things, man.
It is pretty comical sometimes. And ultimately, I mean, insurance covers you for a lot of things. So a lot of these stories are kind of scary for people, but then ultimately the end result to that one was pretty positive for you. Well, how do you overcome that stuff at the end of the day? Like all those things, what's maybe to wrap up, I guess. And there are a lot of horror stories that you've shared. Those ones at the end are pretty wild. How do you kind of get past that mentally and move on and be okay with it?
Great question. I'll answer it this way. All that stuff is just stuff. Like every day at work, stuff happens to people. Every day in life, stuff happens to people. And if I would have quit in 2008 when that place flooded, if I would have quit in 2007 when that shot went through the window or through the door, if I would have quit in 2006 when I found 25 grow plants, marijuana plants in my basement suite, I would not have the life I have today. And, it's funny, like I talk to people all the time and they're like, I want to do this and I want this and I want this. They talk about these superficial things, like, whether you call it a belize or a purpose or what you're after, everyone ties it to material stuff. I want a Porsche. I want money. I want to make $10,000 a month. Well, the truth is there's not enough meat on that for you to sink into that will keep you going when times get tough. What I always wanted was to give my kids a life that I never had. So if that was meat, that wasn't money, that wasn't fancy cars or toys and shit like that. I wanted to give my kids the life that I never had. And I had a great life, but I want them to experience different things than I did. And in order for me to do that, there was times that got tough and it was just stuff. But what we did, every time I learned something, what I mean by learned is every time something happened to me, like the flood, the pot plants, the shootings, the strippers, the non-payment of rent, the shower door guy, every time something happens, it's like, okay, how do I prevent that from happening again? What lessons do I learn to make the system better? Because if I see things 2 or 3 times, it's like, that's a pattern, I got to fix that, because I don't want that to keep on showing up. I think people get into real estate for the wrong reasons. I think they get in thinking that's going to be an easy ride, and they don't understand how the times are tough. And then they buy into the story of, I have a friend of a friend of a friend who said this.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, that's not true. Like there's a version of that's true, but let's talk about the friend of the friend of friend that did it wrong. Because there's all kinds of stories. Like I don't have people trashing my house anymore. I don't have, come April 1st, we had 526 tenants. On April 1st, pandemic, guys, we had 520 tenants pay rent. 520 tenants pay rent. By April 20th, we had 526 tenants pay rent. On May 1st, we had 535 tenants. 535 tenants paid rent May 1st. So, for every bad story, there's 1,000 good ones, but everyone focuses on the bad. So to answer your question, Sandy, I know it's a long-winded, it's just stuff. And don't get attached to stuff and situations that happen, because if your goal or if your purpose is bigger than money and fancy cars and this lifestyle, you'll always smash through it to have success on the other side.
Love that. Totally agree.
Oh yeah. What's next for you? Let's wrap it up with that.
Oh man. Geez, personally, we're moving to the lake. We're trying to sell our house. So if anyone wants to buy a house in Kelowna, come on by it. It's a great $1.7 million house. I'll give you a deal. I'll take commission off. Totally kidding. I won't. No, you know what? All honestly, my kids are 15 and 13 years old. And what I've realized I realize it now that my kids are grown up. And I missed, I started buying real estate in 2003. And in 2005, we had our first kid. I bought 64 properties in 2005. And and I kept on going. I bought 32 the next year. I bought 20 something the next year. I just kept on going. And I'm at, it's a funny story. My kid, my kid the other day was searching up Dolly Parton, I'm working 9 to 5. So she's looking up this song, but he was searching up I'm working 5 to 9. And I'm like, great, like why 5 to 9? He's 12, he's 13 years old. I'm like, why 5 to 9? He's like, well, that's the work week, 5 to 9. And I'm like, what do you mean 5 to 9? Like 5 at night to 9 at night. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, because I typically will, like, my kid will come home from school or hockey or whatever, because they will go to the academy, and they'll see me working on the phone or on the computer for these hours. But during the day, I don't work. I'm hanging out with my wife. We're going to the boat. We're watching the kids at hockey. Like I'm at all their events. Like life's pretty good. So what's next is to continue nurturing the relationship with my kids. And because they're at this age now at 15 and 13, where they're going to start dating and they're going to start experiencing things differently, and they're going to start like setting their future path. And I want to be a part of it. And, the real estate's still going, we're still growing, we're still building, we're still doing the coaching thing, which is so much fun. But that's what's next for us, is to really honor our relationship and what we've done in our lives, my wife and I, and really instill some of these core values into our kids.
Awesome stuff, man. I wish you all the best in that.
Yeah.
And if anyone is looking for, it's actually 1.8 million.
Yeah.
1.8,
Yeah. And I just want to say, Carla says that she loves your stories. So we've got a comment from Carla on Facebook. Right on. Okay. Well, Jared, man, thanks a lot for sharing all this stuff. I really enjoyed this. It's been super fun. So thanks again.
Yeah,
guys, this was awesome. I love your show. Like, you guys are rocking it. So keep it up.
And if people want to reach you, the best way is?
Yeah. So Facebook, I love Facebook, which is Tilt Property Group. Our website is tiltgroup.ca, or you guys can email me directly, Jared, Jared, at tiltgroup.ca.
Nice and easy. And again, those will be on our page. So anyone that missed that can just go over there and all the links will be there. Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
I mean, Facebook's great too. I'm gonna start saying Facebook because that's really easy. 289-389-6846 works, or info@mckrealtynetwork.com. You
can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks guys.